Hello, true believers. My name is Jim, and today I want to talk to you guys about a trade paperback that my friend Brent let me borrow. The review I'm going to be doing today is on The Ultimates. Now, this is actually volume 2 of The Ultimates, so don't let the cover fool you. There is a volume 1 trade paperback. The way that it works with Brent is that I only can borrow one thing at a time, and that's for his protection because typically I will borrow something and never give it back. Like with Thor, for example, I think I borrowed the Thor movie for maybe a year before I finally watched it. This way, I can't get anything new until I give Brent back one trade paperback and he gives me the next one. It's kind of a check and balance system, and it keeps his collection integrity intact. So The Ultimates this is volume 2. It's a 13 comic book arc that was all bundled together, written by Mark Miller and illustrated by Brian Hitch. Now, I don't know who these people are, but I can tell you that Brian Hitch as an illustrator is incredible. Some of the artwork in here is some of the best I've ever seen. The amount of detail that he puts into things is absolutely ridiculous. And one of the big draws that I took away from this was that, a lot of times, like if you think of old cartoons, you think of like old like Looney Tunes cartoons, you can tell what objects the characters are going to interact with because they're usually a lot more vibrant and they're more pronounced. Like if Bugs Bunny's walking through a library and he's going to like pull a book off a shelf, you could tell what book it is because it's the only one that maybe has the artwork on the spine or that has the pages clearly indicated in the center. And I think that's done as a time thing where they don't really feel like they need to animate everything. Well, I feel like comic books suffer from that a lot as well. But The Ultimates, especially under Brian Hitch here, he definitely took the detail to draw everything. So a comic book to me is usually a pretty quick read. I spent a significant amount of time going through these pages because I was really admiring every little piece of detail and every little granular, every inch of every cell is complete, or panel, I don't know what you guys call it, is really, really pronounced, really vibrant, really detailed. And I think that it creates a much better story. I mean, I'm talking like the creases. I'm talking about like stitching on someone's uniform. I'm talking about detailing of like a room, like each little key on a computer or something. Really, really a lot of attention has gone into it. I wouldn't say it's photorealistic. I mean, it's very clearly a illustrated comic book, but really attention to detail put in here. So if you're one of those people who's just an art enthusiast, I think you would enjoy reading this, if nothing else for the eye candy. Pictures aside, though, the story is actually pretty interesting. Now, this takes place in some sort of fictional universe. I know Marvel has this, what do they do? What do they call it? Alternate universes, like different worlds, way worlds or something. I don't even remember the name. But it's not like the Marvel that we know of. It's not like the real Marvel. This is just like, meanwhile, like an alternate dimension or an alternate reality. And that's where I love trade paperbacks because I don't know the history of all these people. I don't know that Captain America, what he's been up to the last 90 years or the last 90 minutes even. So when you get these self-contained stories, you don't have to worry about any of that. It's just a snapshot in time. Here's where we are today. Anything you need to know, any crazy backstory, any variant, any twist we've done on things, we're going to explain to you in the pages of this book. So you don't have to worry about coming with a bunch of knowledge because I have none when it comes to comic book lore and history and why things are the way that they are. So The Ultimates is a retelling of the formation of the Avengers. And it's not the typical Avengers that you would expect to see like coming up in the Infinity War movie. There's a lot of weird people in there. In particular, there's two characters that I've never heard of before, the Giant Man and the Wasp. Now, the Giant Man is kind of a dorky name. His power is that he can get really big. Doesn't necessarily mean he gets really strong. He just gets really big, like 5 stories tall big. The Wasp, who is his wife, has the ability to turn into not really a wasp like with a stinger, but really tiny. So you have a really big guy and really little girl. Somehow the powers that be felt that they would be good Avengers. You still have Hulk and Thor, who seems to be mentally touched, which I love, by the way. Captain America, of course, the leader, and Iron Man, the co-leader. That seems to be a continuous theme in a lot of these Avenger books, that you always have Captain America and Iron Man. And I guess that's good because it's at least something that I can relate to. I don't really know if I care too much about the giant man or wasp girl, but that's okay. I'm not picking on it. It's good because it's something different, right? So this story forms basically Nick Fury is going to put together this ultimate team to prevent the world, the United States in particular. They're going to be like the good guy superhero squad, which is really what the Avengers is anyway. I don't think that's anything really much of a novel concept. Where the story starts to take a little bit of a turn, however, is that instead of the team being formed to fight other supervillains, which was the original intent, at least the way I was understood as I read through it, it eventually takes this really weird turn where somehow there's this alien race that has been embedding themselves into world politics, Earth politics, and slowly trying to corrupt society and put it under this weird martial law kind of control scheme. So naturally, some of the aliens were around during like the time of the Nazis and Hitler. One of the chapters in this book actually goes back to Captain America fighting back during World War II, trying to blow up a munitions train, which was controlled by these aliens to, take over the world. So the plot is a little weird in the sense that it's kind of a swerve. They're like, hey, we're going to fight these supervillains. So I'm thinking, cool, we're going to get to see like Magneto, or I don't know, maybe like Evil Wolverine, or I don't know, any other major villains that like we've seen in other Marvel movies. They're going to be bad guys and you're going to pit these group of ultimates against those guys. No, we don't have that. What we have is a lot of infighting, we have domestic abuse, we have jealousy, and aliens. and it just kind of was like, wait, what? So to me, that was kind of a little off. However, once you put that aside, and obviously in comic book land, anything can happen. So we're going to roll with the punches here. What you find is the Ultimates is not as perfect as they appear to be. So there's a lot of jealousy issues with Giant Man, for example, to the point that he actually tries to murder his wife by summoning ants on her. I'm trying not to laugh because it is really stupid, but it was actually a very emotional scene at the time. And Captain America basically going out and beating up Giant Man, completely incapacitating him for the second volume of the adventure by like basically beating the crap out of him. Like, how dare you touch your wife? And I like her. I want to be with her, so I'm going to beat you up because you're a bad guy. And now the Wasp is kind of stuck in the middle because she's like, well, geez, I just was abused by my husband, and then this guy that, is kind of defending me, and like, it's kind of too much to handle. I'm in the ER recovering from these killer ant bite wounds. That was really cool. You have Hulk going absolutely nutso, injecting himself with the Captain America super soldier serum and going like nutso Hulk and causing destruction and death. Kind of like what we saw in the first Avengers movie where Hulk just goes ballistic. So he gets locked in a cell and he has to be like set alone because like he's out of control. So they're like, keep him under sedation and lock him up. Eventually he does get released to go up against the big bad, and actually performs cannibalism, which is really cool for the Hulk. Actually like ripping a dude's face and like eating it and crunching his bones. And like, that's why, Bruce Banner is apparently a vegetarian, because sometimes the Hulk goes nuts and eats people. So you have some really weird stuff, but it works because it's, this ancillary world, again, number one. But number two, I think it just goes to show how far this team is pushed, when this alien threat comes, and how out of their comfort shell, and how this stress really impacts each of them differently. And I really did like that. Even Thor has a very big role in this movie, in this book. Thor is mentally insane. He actually has some sort of like mental condition. He's crazy. And he has the powers of a god. He's flying around. He's got a hammer that doesn't look like the regular Thor hammer, which I thought was a really cool touch. So he looks totally different. He's flying around, blowing things up with lightning. He's out of control. Iron Man has like anxiety over getting in the suit. He's nervous. He's a drunk, which I know is a common theme in the comic books, I guess beforehand. So he has, he's just not like the, cool Johnny Suave kind of guy that you see in the Marvel movies. He's really kind of messed up too. And you really look at this team and it's like, are they really that ultimate? It really works though, like I said. So if you haven't had a chance to check this out, this is volume 2 of the Ultimates. Again, it's by Mark Miller and Brian Hitch. This particular story arc ran 13 episodes involving the alien invasion. I think they're called, I was trying to look at the cover here, I think they're called the Centauri something. Doesn't matter. They're aliens that look like people but infest society. What happens when you take Earth's mightiest heroes and throw them into this pit? You have amazing artwork. You have a pretty good story, all things considered. Like I said, when you have to really kind of, take everything with a grain of salt here, some of the dialogue here is a little goofy, but that's okay. The story is cool. I haven't really seen many comic books deal with like any kind of superhero domestic abuse. It was neat to see how everybody reacts to that. It was neat to see Hulk's remorse over how crazy he became. It's neat to see kind of just how this hodgepodge group of heroes works together against a common evil. So if you haven't checked it out, it's called The Ultimates. I highly recommend you do so. I'm curious to see what Brent gives me next to read, but I will try to do these much more frequently to continue to pump up channel for the best YouTube channel when it comes to comic book news and reviews. That, of course, is BK's Bullets. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there and read some comics books. And until next time, I will see you guys in the funny pages.